October 4th, 1990, Sublevel B2, World Trade Center, North Tower Parking Garage, Manhattan. 2,000 parking spots, thousands of commuters, tourists, construction workers, and office staff cycling through every single day. It is one of the busiest pieces of real estate on the planet, underground or otherwise, and somewhere in the middle of all that movement, a 1987 Cadillac has been sitting completely still for 72 hours. Nobody flagged it. Nobody called it in. Nobody thought to look twice at a car that simply wasn't going anywhere. On the afternoon of October 4th, a garage attendant finally does what nobody else bothered to do. He walks over. He peers through the window, and what he finds inside that vehicle is going to quietly become one of the most significant mob murder cases in American history. Not because of who did it, but because of what the victim built, what he left unfinished, and what that unfinished work would eventually mean 11 years later. The man in the front seat is 63 years old. He weighs over 300 pounds. He is still holding a beeper in one hand, as if he was waiting for a call that was never going to come. The trunk behind him is loaded with documents. Construction records, contracts, business filings. He has been shot 7 times. 3 of those shots were placed in the back of his skull. His name is Louis Dono, and the building directly above his body, the one whose steel skeleton he was personally paid to protect from fire, is the building where John Gotti arranged to have him killed. Now here is what makes this story different from every other Gambino family hit you've ever heard about. Dono didn't flip. He didn't steal from Gotti. He didn't go behind anyone's back to a rival crew. He didn't embarrass the family publicly, he didn't cooperate with law enforcement, and he didn't try to cut anyone out of their earnings. What he did was simpler, and somehow more fatal. He stopped picking up the phone. To understand how a man ends up dead in a parking garage over missed appointments, you have to go back to where Louis Dono built his reputation. And his reputation was built on one thing: fireproofing. Dono was born in New York in May 1927, and he came of age in exactly the kind of environment that produced men like him. Post-war New York, where the city was rebuilding itself at a pace that made fortunes for anyone who understood the plumbing of how construction contracts actually got awarded. Not the official process, the real one. The one that ran through union halls and mob-connected captains and handshake agreements that never appeared in any public record. He became a made member of the Gambino Crime Family, assigned to the crew of the Captain Pasquale Conte. His trade was specialty commercial work, drywall, and specifically fireproofing. The technical process of coating steel beams with fire-resistant compounds so that when the worst happens inside a skyscraper, the structure holds long enough for people to get out. He was good at it. Good enough by the late 1960s to land contracts on the most ambitious building project New York had ever attempted. The World Trade Center. Twin towers, 110 floors each. Every inch of structural steel in both buildings required fireproofing before the next floor could go up. The Port Authority of New York and New Jersey ran the contracting process, and Dono's company was awarded the work. He started in 1969, applying spray-on fireproofing compound to the steel crossbeams floor by floor as the towers rose. He made it to the 36th floor of the North Tower before the job changed on him. In April 1970, New York City's Department of Air Resources stepped in. The compound Dono had been spraying onto that steel contained asbestos. The application had to stop immediately. The Port Authority needed to switch to a safer, asbestos-free material, and someone needed to come back through every floor already completed and recoat the steel with the new compound. Louis Dono's company got that contract too. This is where the documented record becomes uncomfortable to sit with. Forensic building investigator Roger Morse, who spent years photographing the interiors of both towers throughout the 1990s, recorded what he found when he got close to those steel beams. The fireproofing was inconsistent in a way that shouldn't have been possible on a properly supervised job. Some sections of steel had no coating at all. Other sections had the compound sprayed directly onto corroded, rusted metal, which is a fundamental application error because the compound won't bond to rust. It slides off. It provides nothing. The steel underneath might as well be bare. After the towers fell on September 11, 2001, the National Science Foundation funded an independent engineering investigation. Professor Frederick Mara of the University of Maryland's Fire Protection Engineering program, working alongside colleagues from multiple institutions, concluded that deficient fireproofing on the structural steel was a meaningful contributing factor in the speed and totality of both collapses. Louis Dono was paid to do a job. He took the money, he did the job wrong, and the steel he was supposed to protect held up millions of square feet of occupied office space for the next 30 years. But in the early 1980s, none of that has surfaced yet. What surfaces instead is a different kind of problem, and this one is inside the family. Salvatore Gravano, born 1945, known universally as Sammy the Bull. By the early 1980s, he is already one of the most feared figures in the Gambino organization. He runs a portfolio of construction front companies, drywall operations, concrete firms, various contracting entities. His own later court testimony places his monthly income from these operations at roughly $100,000, of which he kept 20% and kicked the remaining 80% up the chain. He had been settling disagreements through violence since 1970, and there was nobody in the family who didn't know it. Through their overlapping construction interests, Gravano and Dono meet. Despite being in different crews, Dono under Conte, Gravano under Toto Aurelio, they form a business partnership. Two companies carrying both their names, splitting operations down the middle. 50-50 with a 10% share going to the boss. Gravano brought the labor connections and the muscle. Dono was supposed to handle the operations side, the payroll, the accounting, the day-to-day logistics. Within months, the complaints start arriving. Job sites are going unstaffed. Workers are showing up with no materials waiting for them. No supervisor, nobody directing anything. Pension and welfare contributions for union employees aren't being filed. Suppliers aren't being paid. Gravano starts trying to reach Dono. Dono doesn't show for meetings. The missed appointments stack up. Gravano's name is on the filings. He is the one absorbing the legal and financial exposure from decisions he never made. He takes it to a formal sit-down before the full Gambino administration, boss Paul Castellano, underboss Neil Della Croce, the whole room. He lays out the evidence. Dono had been systematically draining the partnership while leaving Gravano holding the liability. At some point during that sit-down, Gravano loses whatever composure he walked in with. He stands up and in front of Castellano and Della Croce announces that he wants to kill Dono on the spot. The room goes quiet. Della Croce backs Gravano's account of events. Castellano makes his ruling. Dono lives. He pays Gravano $200,000. The partnership dissolves. Everyone goes home. What this moment establishes, and this is the part that matters, is a documented pattern. Louis Dono had now demonstrated twice, in front of increasingly powerful witnesses, exactly what he does when a situation gets uncomfortable. He disappears. He doesn't answer. He doesn't show up. And when he finally has to face consequences, he pays whatever figure makes them go away and then returns to doing exactly what he was doing before. Paul Castellano just saved his life. The man who replaces Paul Castellano will not. December 16th, 1985. Outside Sparks Steakhouse on East 46th Street in Manhattan, Paul Castellano is shot dead getting out of a car. His driver, Thomas Bellotti, is killed at the same moment. The man who ordered both murders and stood across the street to watch them carried out was a 45-year-old captain from Ozone Park named John Gotti. Gotti assumes control of the Gambino family and immediately begins running it in a manner that has almost nothing in common with how Castellano operated. Where Castellano was methodical, distant and bureaucratic, Gotti is personal. He wants his people visible, accessible, and present. He summons captains and soldiers for face-to-face meetings with a frequency that would have been unusual under the previous administration. And the specific thing that pushes Gotti toward violence faster than almost anything else is the feeling that someone is not taking him seriously enough to show up when called. For Gotti, that is not an administrative problem, that is a challenge to his authority. And challenges to his authority had exactly one documented outcome. By 1987, Gotti has been fully briefed by Gravano on everything. The stolen partnership money, the sit-down with Castellano, the $200,000 settlement, all of it. Gotti's response to this history is to tell Gravano to stay away from Dono and let him handle it personally. He sits with Dono directly. And in that meeting, Dono tells him something that lands. He tells Gotti there is an enormous amount of construction work coming out of the World Trade Center. Drywall contracts, renovation contracts, ongoing maintenance work valued in the hundreds of millions. And he, Louis Dono, is already embedded in that contracting structure. He knows the relationships, he has the access. Partner with me, he tells the boss, and the family captures that money. Gravano later describes Gotti's reaction in his memoir with the phrase, hook, line and sinker. Gotti takes Dono under his direct protection. He refuses Gravano's standing request to have Dono killed. He establishes Dono as his personal contractor and waits for the returns to come in. Then Dono does it again. Gotti calls for him. Dono doesn't appear. Captain Conti schedules a meeting. Dono doesn't come to that one. A second appointment is set. Dono misses that too. Gravano watches this unfold and recognizes it immediately. The exact same behavior. The exact same pattern. The same man who disappeared on him, who disappeared on Castellano's court, is now disappearing on the boss of the entire Gambino family. December 12th, 1989. The apartment above the Ravenite Social Club, Mulberry Street, Little Italy. The FBI had already wired the main floor of the Ravenite when they realized Gotti was moving his most sensitive conversations upstairs into the apartment of the widow of a deceased Gambino soldier. They put a microphone up there too. By November of 1989, that wire was live. On December 12th, Gotti sits in that apartment with consigliere Frank Locascio, and the conversation turns to Louis Dono. What follows gets read into the federal court record at Gotti's 1992 trial verbatim. Gotti reviews the file. He acknowledges clearly that Dono has not stolen from him. He has not committed any act that would traditionally justify a death sentence under Gambino family protocol. And then he states his conclusion plainly into a room the FBI is recording in full. You know why he's dying. He's going to die because he refused to come in when I called. Locascio suggests that at their next meeting, Dono might try to smooth things over with $50,000. Gotti's response, captured on tape, I wouldn't take nothing. And then, he's going to get killed because he disobeyed coming. The FBI, when they reviewed that recording, missed the target's name. They didn't identify Dono as the man being discussed. He was never warned. He had no idea that his own boss had already sentenced him to death on a federal recording. March 28th, 1990. Word reaches the Ravenite that Dono has shown up outside unannounced. Gravano describes the moment in court. They were caught off guard by the timing, not by their ability to respond. Dono walks in. He is not killed that day. The logistics aren't there in that moment, but this sentence has already been handed down in Gotti's own voice months earlier. The contract is given first to Dono's own captain, Pasquale Conte. Conte can't close it. Getting a man who avoided sanctioned meetings to walk into an unsanctioned one is a different problem entirely. The work passes to Charles Caneglia, a Gambino soldier who federal prosecutors would later document in 2008 had a particular method for managing difficult disposal situations involving barrels of acid. Gotti's driver and bodyguard Bobby Borriello, 6'3" from Bensonhurst, is also assigned to the job. At some point before October 4th, They get Dono into that parking garage beneath the North Tower. 7 shots, 3 in the back of the head. His body is arranged across the front seat of his Cadillac, beeper still in his hand. Trunk full of business records. It takes 72 hours for anyone to find him. No cameras in the garage, thousands of people passing above and around that car daily. Nobody notices. When Gravano is told the job is done, he turns on the news. He reads the papers the following morning. Nothing. No report. He is concerned enough to go directly to Borriello for confirmation. The answer comes back clean. He's in the garage at the World Trade Center. It just hasn't surfaced yet. The National Police Defense Foundation, in their documented analysis of the murder, noted the security failure in plain terms. The same absence of surveillance infrastructure that allowed a body to decompose undetected for 3 days in that garage would allow less than 3 years later a vehicle loaded with explosives to enter the same structure without any challenge. The World Trade Center bombing of February 26, 1993 killed 6 people and caused 68 days after Dono's body is found, the FBI moves. December 11, 1990. Agents and NYPD detectives descend on the Ravenite social club simultaneously. John Gotti, Salvatore Gravano and Frank Locascio are arrested together. The indictment includes 5 counts of murder. Paul Castellano, Thomas Bellotti, Robert Di Bernardo, Liborio Milito, and Louis Dono. They have the tapes. They have Gotti's voice, unambiguous, unprompted, explaining his own reasoning in the kind of detail that prosecutors spend entire careers hoping to capture. At the 1992 trial, those words, "He's going to die because he refused to come in when I called," are read aloud to the jury. John Gotti is convicted on all counts. He dies in federal prison in June 2002. Louis Dono is buried long before that. The steel he fireproofed, the steel he was paid to protect and chose not to, stands for 30 more years before September 11, 2001, when fire reaches those beams, and the question of what was actually applied to them and how thoroughly and whether any of it was done correctly becomes a question with a weight no one ever anticipated. Every piece of this story connects to every other piece. The man, the building, the failure, the murder, the tape, the collapse. It all runs in a single line, and it starts with a car that sat in a parking garage for 3 days while thousands of people walked past without looking.